Hello and welcome to Fusion 289's video on how to use Blender. We're showing you how to use Blender specifically to make static meshes for UE4 for Unreal Tournament. That's the intended purpose of the video. It will give you some all-around basics if there's some other stuff you're wanting to learn. Maybe you've watched a few other videos and you want to learn something else but you're not quite using it. I'll give you a little couple tips and tricks, little things I've learned along the lines. First, if you happen to like the video when you're done, and I'm going to make sure there's a link at the bottom, you can come here to my GoFundMe and make some donations to help me get a little bit of a better setup, better camera, better recording software. Right now I'm using one that has a little 10-minute time limit for the Microsoft encoder. It was about the best one I could find for free. However, like I said, it's a 10-minute, so around the 10-minute mark you may see a little hiccup here or there, or some words get repeated because I have to kind of pick up where I left off. But anyway, let's get right back to it. You guys are here to learn Blender. When you first launch it, you get that little DOS box that pops up, and then it'll go here. This will give you a default landing page, and a couple things you may notice are all the buttons and all that, and hey, there's no X. Well, they don't have an X on it. You can just click anywhere to get out of that. It does have some useful information if you want to use it. Some stuff on support documentation and any of your recent stuff. If this is your first time launching it, which is what I'm assuming here, you'll be able to see, it should see blank right there, nothing there. If we just click anywhere in the gray space, you're going to see the default landing. Okay, what we have is a default cube, a camera over here, this little black thing on the left, and then a light. That light right there and that camera that's right over here on the left, you're not going to need those. So what I typically do first thing right off the bat, just click it, click the little eye, come over here, click it, and then click the eye. If you want, you can also just click them and delete. You can right click and delete stuff from here if you want. Just kind of cleans it up, and you've got less you've got to select, especially when you've got 20 or 30 little cubes or cylinders or what have you, different planes. Excuse me, sorry about that. Alright, getting down to it. Navigation is pretty straightforward on Blender. It's very similar to the way UE4 is. Slight tweaks. You can go in and change those settings. I'm going to put a link at the bottom of the YouTube video, so just be looking down there in case you're looking for something in specific that I don't list. It'll tell you how to change all the functions. As an example, if you do not have a third mouse button, the third mouse button / mouse wheel is what is used to actually move around in Blender. So if I click and hold down with that or the emulated button, you'll notice I can now rotate and move what I'm looking at. You can also zoom in and out. The other thing you can do is you may have noticed this little red and white circle. That's simply a placeholder, and I can right click anywhere and it will put that somewhere. And now once I move it, you can kind of get an idea of where it is in space. What that is for is just where you're placing your little create stuff. So if you go to the tab on the left that says create and I just drop in a plane, you can see I'll move it around a little bit. That's where it drops it. So I'll move the other one over here. There's another plane. Anyway, we're just going to delete those back out because we're not worried about that. You'll also notice there's a whole bunch of other items there, and one that you may be curious about is the monkey. Why in the world is there a monkey? Well, it's Blender's unofficial mascot. That's the whole reason for it. It's just one of those little silly things that they kind of started off with and just decided to add it in as a little goofy little Easter egg type thing they put in there. Anyway, you can also hit the shift button, specifically the left shift, at least that's the one I'm using, and then the middle mouse button, and you'll notice this kind of pans things around a little bit. You can also shift and mouse wheel as well if you want, or you can middle mouse button to move it around depending on what you're wanting to do. If you hit the control button, you'll also notice that it does side to side. Again, shift is up and down when you're using your scrolling wheel, or if you just click and hold the shift. Control kind of does something similar with the zoom. It'll lock whatever axis you're on, and you'll be able to quickly just zoom in and out. One thing to note though, when you're hitting shift and moving around, when you zoom in, and this may take a little bit of work for me to get there, you'll notice that sometimes you'll want to zoom in on something. Yeah, here we go. And you won't be able to get all the way in, and that's because we're off-centered. If you'll notice, I'm now kind of pivoted on this one little point. So you want to get back on center, and the easiest way that I found to do that, I know I'm sure there's much easier way, but it's just what I usually do. I just kind of put that one in the middle and notice, the center point's kind of here. Now I'm going to shift click, middle mouse button, And there we go. And I'm relatively close. Now I can zoom way in the middle again. Anyway, that's how that works. Another function you can do is the Alt key. You can hold down the Alt key while using the mouse, or rather, after you middle mouse button to start moving around, you can hold the Alt key, and that will lock your perspective on different angles. As you notice, as I keep moving, it just kind of keeps locking it. It has its uses, and I'll show you how that's going to come in handy a little bit later, especially when you start getting into the more advanced option on showing you how to build the little grid stuff for grates that I've made. But anyway, and I do highly advise following through and going through those and making some of those. Even if you only do one of them, you'll probably learn a couple of things along the way as you go through and make that item. And you may learn a little bit more of something that you may just not have known you can do. But anyway, what you get is this static box right here, and you can move it around in a couple different ways. The first is with this little red arrow here, just like you would in Unreal. The difference is it's going to lock it to that axis and only move it on that axis, which actually I take it back. Unreal does the same thing, but you're going to have that little bar here where you can kind of move it on both at the same time, or here and move them on both at the same time. You can do something similar by holding the Shift key, and you'll notice it allows me to move it on both. Shift allows me to move it on here. If I hit, let's see here. And it primarily does it off of the Z and the other axis, and that's about it. There's other ways of doing it and other options and commands. You just have to kind of look into it. I typically haven't really used it that much. Another thing you can do in order to move this around, if you hit the N as in November key, you'll notice this window pops up here. Right here's your location. This little orange dot represents the pivot point, the location manipulation that you're going to have up here, etc., etc. So if I just do 0, 0, 0, that will put us right back where we were. You'll notice also, if I don't hit enter after I enter the number, I've got this little thing right here, the little icon indicating that I've got a number. You can just left click anywhere and it'll go away, or you can hit the enter key, whatever you want to do. Now you'll notice we're back on the middle. You should now be back right back in the middle. Another thing you can do is you can rotate. You can do that by one of two ways. If you come down here, there is a transformation manipulators, in this case rotate. You know, they could have just simply put rotate on there and left all that off, but being that it's an open source, you know, they kind of have to go with what the community thinks. You can go on the Z axis and rotate, and you'll notice the numbers over here are changing. Typically I like to try, let's say I don't want it quite square, but I want it over here. So okay, that's 45 degrees, that's negative 45, so we'll go negative 45. And then let's say I want to move it on the red one, and I just want it to, that point kind of on the Z-axis. So that's about 26 degrees roughly. And if I lock it by holding the Alt, you'll notice that both of those points pretty close to being right on the middle of it. I might be able to put that at 27. No, that didn't quite work. So we'll do it at 25. Yeah, there we go. So now both points are pretty close to being right on that one plane, bisecting it. But you know, those are just the little things you can do. You can also grab the white one, and that'll allow you to pretty much manipulate all of them and go in any which direction. I don't find it to work really great using it that way unless you're just kind of trying to eyeball where you want it. Typically I won't. I just come over here and I start typing numbers until I get it about where I think I want it. The other one you can do is, we're going to 0, 0, 0 all that so the rotation's back, is you can also set the scale. If you click here, it's going to give you these little things that'll switch it out. So now I can click the red one and I can make this longer on that way. I can click the green one, longer on that way. And if you'll notice, these numbers here are both changing. The dimension and the scale is going up. And you'll notice the two numbers are a little off. There we go. So we're just going to set that all back to a 1-to-1-to-1 ratio. And that basically is what that is just kind of a ratio. So if we go on the Z-axis up, you'll notice that the two are just a little bit different. And again, that's pretty much just because everything's not quite square. If we square it off, now we're a 2-by-2-by-2. We're just going to change the X dimension to 8. So you'll notice that makes that a 4. And the reason it does that is because it's actually going to be, since the center point's here, you're adding it to both sides. So you're doing 4 this way, 4 that way. If you actually count 1, 2, let's see here, 1, 2, 3, 4. There's 4 of them. 1, 2, 3, 4. That's how many units it is. You can hit the tab button to get into edit